Hello students, welcome to my YouTube class. Today I am going to discuss chapter number 7, food habits of organisms. We know that in this world there are many different organisms, and all these organisms they are very much different from one another. Starting from the smallest to the largest, all the organisms have got different food habits. Before we discuss the food habits of the organisms, let us learn about the food first. We know this food has become so important for us that we are not able to survive without this food, because each and every living organism or living being requires this food to get its energy for performing different functions or activities in his or day-to-day life. So all the organisms they need this food for their survival, because this food it helps them to get the energy, and by getting this energy they are able to perform different activities of their life. Not only they are able to perform the activities that they need to be performed, but this food it also provides certain materials that are required by the body of an organism for the growth and repairment of its body. Looking at the organisms, these scientists they have classified these organisms based on the food habits of different organisms into different groups. We know that there are many different organisms, and all the organisms they have different food habits. The way they collect their food, or the way they gather their food, or the type of food that they eat is very much different in case of different organisms. So looking at the food habits of different organisms, the scientists they have classified these organisms into different groups so that it can become easy for us to know the food habits of different animals that comes under each group. So let us start with the first group, that is the producers. These scientists they have classified those organisms under the group producers, and these producers include all such organisms which are able to produce food by themselves. For example, the green plants including algae. All these organisms they are able to produce food by themselves, and they are known as producers. We know many plants are green, and we find some of the algae are green in color. So this green in color in the algae and the green color plants, it tells us that they are producers. They are able to produce food by themselves. So let us learn how they are able to produce food by themselves. We have never seen a plant going and cooking food like we do. We cook our food and then we take it. Yes, but the plants they are not able to move from one place to other place. But even though they don't have to move from one place to other place, how they are able to produce food by themselves? They are able to manufacture food by themselves by undergoing a process called photosynthesis. This photosynthesis is a process which is undergone by the green plants and some algae. In this process, what happens is that they are able to manufacture food in the presence of sunlight by absorbing water and minerals from the soil and carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The chlorophyll pigment, which is present in the green parts of the plant, helps in trapping the light from the sun. So by undergoing a process known as photosynthesis, they are able to produce food for their plants. So carbon dioxide, when it reacts with water in the presence of sunlight, which is trapped by the chlorophyll, it produces sugar and oxygen. So this sugar is the glucose which is used as a food by the plant, and oxygen is again released out from the plant. So in this way the plants undergo the photosynthesis process to produce food by themselves. The second group is the herbivores. Under this group we get all those animals that depends on plants directly for their food. For example, cow, goat, deer, zebra, or We can also say the honeybees, fruit-eating birds, leaf-munching tortoises, aquatic creatures like fishes and all. Okay, they come under this group known as herbivores. And these organisms, okay, they always depend on plants for their food. Some of the herbivorous organisms like the giant pandas, okay, they have their own likes and dislikes. That means they always love to eat bamboo shoot. Likewise, many other herbivorous organisms have their own likes and dislikes. For example, the butterflies and all, what they used to do is that they prepare different flowers for sucking the nectar from the flower of a plant. Okay. Thirdly, we have got the carnivorous group. This carnivorous group includes all those animals that kill the other animals and eat the flesh of other animals. That means they depend on the flesh of other animals by killing the animal. For example, these lions, tigers, okay, and all, they come under this group. What they used to do is that these animals, they used to follow the animals from a distance. Whenever they happen to see any deer or cow or buffalo and all, these animals, tigers and lions, used to follow this animal, and then they hunt the animal. After hunting it, what they used to do is that they used to eat the flesh of such animals. So all these animals like lions, tigers and all, as they fed on the flesh of other animals by killing the animal, they come under these groups. Under these carnivores, we also get some other subgroups as scavengers and insectivores. These insectivorous organisms are those organisms that fed on the dead and decaying organic matter of animals. For example, a tiger or a lion has killed a deer and has eaten half of the flesh of that deer. After eating it, what will happen is that the remaining portion of the food will remain on the spot. Then what will happen after 4 or 5 days or after weeks, what will happen is that the flesh will get spoilt or bad smells will start coming out from the dead deer. So these animals, which are called as scavengers, okay, vultures and hyenas, these animals, they will get the smell from a large distance and they will go and feed on that rotten or dead or decaying organic matter of that organism. So such organisms, they come under this scavengers group as vultures and hyenas. Nextly, we have got another subgroup under carnivores as insectivores. Insectivores organisms are those organisms that often eat the insects of other organisms. That means they often feed on insects. For example, we have got insectivorous plants also like pitcher plant, Venus flytrap, all such plants. What they used to do is that they often feed on insects for getting protein. Okay, for getting protein, they feed on the insects as pitcher plant and Venus flytrap. And some are other organisms like spiders and all. What they used to do is that they fed on most other insects, okay, for getting their food. These insectivorous plants, like the pitcher plant, okay, has got a cup-like opening with a lid at the top. At the time, whenever any insect goes and sits inside the opening of the pitcher plant, what happens? The lid of the pitcher plant, it closes, and after it gets closed, some digestive juices are secreted on the insect, and then the plant is able to absorb the food and get protein from it. In this way, these pitcher plants, they trap the insects and get protein from insects. Our next group is regarding the omnivores. Under this group, we get all those organisms that fed both on plants and animals. Even human beings, they also come under this omnivorous group. Polar bears are entirely carnivores, we can say, while giant pandas are mostly herbivores. But if we talk about pigs, rats, hedgehogs, and most of the bears, okay, they come under this omnivorous group because they often depend on both plants and animals for their food. Okay, so in short, we can say all those organisms that fed on both plants and animals, they are known as omnivores. For example, the human beings, most of the bears, pigs, rats, hedgehogs, and all. Okay. When we talk about the feeding habits, at the time when we go for talking about the feeding habits, we mean that the organism generally eats. That means the dog which we keep as a pet in our houses. The pet which we keep as in our houses will eat the things what his or her master will eat. So we know that if we keep these dogs as a pet in our houses, we often give the food that we eat, and the dog will also eat the same food that we eat. So what will happen to the dog? The dog will be coming under the omnivores group. Okay. For example, some other organisms which naturally they are carnivores and not omnivores. We know this dog actually it is not a omnivorous organism. Naturally, they are carnivores. They were supposed to kill other or hunt other animals and eat the flesh of other animals. But if this dog is kept as a pet in our house, then the dog will eat the same thing that we eat. So it will also get converted to an omnivore. Our last second group, that is the parasites. These parasites are those organisms that live on or inside the body of other organisms and derive food and shelter from that organism. For example, lice, fleas, ticks, mites, tapeworms, hookworms, all these organisms, they are called as parasites. Such organisms, what they used to do is that they live on the body of an organism, making the body as a host, and they derive food and shelter from the body. These lice, ticks, mites, and all, they used to live on the skin or hairs of the body of an organism, and they fed on the skin and the blood of that organism, but in return, they don't give anything to that host organism. Okay, and if we talk about tapeworms and hookworms, these are also parasites which are found inside the body of an organism. They are often found inside the body, and what these organisms used to do is that they also derive food and shelter from the body. Okay, at the time when these tapeworms or hookworms bites on the intestine, it used to pain a lot. We are able to feel a pain inside the stomach. So it means that these tapeworms and hookworms are biting on the walls of the intestine to get the food from our body. Okay, these parasites, they are mostly harmful organisms which causes harm to our body. But some of the parasites that we have in our body, okay, they also help our body in some other ways. For example, many of the bacteria that living on our skin and other parts of our body do not generally harm us. Some even help us. For example, the bacteria that we find inside our intestine. Okay, the bacteria that we find inside our intestine, it helps us to digest the food. Okay, so we get very less number of parasitic organisms in our body which are helpful to our body. Most of the parasites, they take favors from the host but do nothing in return. They often cause harm to the body of an organism in which they live and derive food and shelter from as a host. Plants are also parasites. Some of the plants we find which are parasites, for example, the dodder, or in Hindi we can call Akash bell or Amar bell. This dodder plant, it used to grow on other green plants. You can see on the picture given on page 36, you can see a yellow color plant growing on the green color plant. That is, this yellow color plant is the dodder plant. Okay, it doesn't have chlorophyll pigment. It is not able to manufacture food by itself. So this dodder plant is not a producer. It is not able to produce food by themselves. So what happens is that this dodder plant, in order to survive, they used to grow on other plants by making the plant as a host and derive food and shelter from the plant. This dodder plant has got some special types of roots. With the help of the special type of roots, it is to bind on the plant and trap and or get the food that it requires from the plant. Okay, lastly, we have got the saprophytes. These saprophytes is a group which consists of all those organisms that get the food from dead plants and animals, dung, fallen leaves, and all the other things that comes from the side of plants and animals. Even the leaves, branches, twigs and all that falls on the land after it gets dry, it gets it gets vanished after some days. What happens to the leaves or the twigs or the branches that falls on the ground? It doesn't mean that someone has collected and taken away to his home. Not like this. We know that most of the saprophytes, as mushrooms and molds or mosses and all, these organisms, they play a very vital role in the environment. They feed on all the dead and decaying organic matter of plants and animals, dung, fallen leaves, and many other things that comes from the side of plants and animals. So these organisms, they often feed on such organisms by secreting some digestive juices over it, and they take the food from it, and some foods which left after it has been taken, it gets mixed up with the soil. So when it gets mixed up with the soil, it again makes the soil fertile. So we can say that saprophytes, they not only help in cleaning the environment, but they also help in making the soil fertile. My students, hope you all have understood. If you have any doubts or queries, please call me every night between 8 to 10. I shall clarify your doubts. And with this, I end up my class. Thank you. Have a nice day.